Straight Shift with the Car Chick, the podcast that's all about cars, buying, selling, fixing, and driving, and sometimes pretty fast if you're the car chick. Now here she is.
Hey everybody, I am so excited because tomorrow I am leaving to go to Birmingham, Alabama for my first race of the 2018 season. For those of you who don't know, I race in a 24-hour endurance road course series for a woman-owned race team out of Knoxville, Tennessee, and it's just my favorite thing to do. And this track in Birmingham, it's called Barber Motorsports Park. And it is like the Bellagio of racetracks. I swear it looks like a country club. They even have these beautiful metal sculptures at various places on the track, and they have golf course grass. I mean, it's crazy. The owner of it, George Barber, he owns like 90% of the state of Alabama. He's a big real estate guy there, and he has more money than God. And so he built this racetrack as pretty much a playground for himself, and he's kind enough to let other people play on it too. But it is very technologically advanced from the safety equipment and all the monitoring systems. Their race control room looks like something out of NASA's Houston Control. They could probably, coordinate a moon landing from it. And the track is super smooth with beautiful asphalt. We just love racing there. It's such an honor, and I'm so excited to be going back there this year to kick off the 2018 season. And that got me thinking. A lot of people think that race car drivers, we're crazy, which granted, okay, I'll give you that. We probably are. But they think we're adrenaline junkies. And that's not necessarily true, because when you're out on the racetrack and, you're driving well over 100 miles an hour and you've got 100 other cars around you also going that fast, and all sorts of crazy things can happen. So adrenaline's not your friend in that circumstance. You really want to stay very calm and kind of get to this Zen place so that when something crazy does happen around you, a car spins out, something breaks, just basically all hell breaks loose, because that's what happens in racing. But when that happens, you can't afford for your body to have a fight or flight response, because that does the wrong thing. It'll make you do and react in the wrong way. You have to, stay calm and say, oh, okay, that happened, therefore I need to do this to adjust. And that is something that takes a lot of training and experience, something we call seat time. And that got me thinking, most people probably learn to drive in their mom or dad's car, going in little circles in a parking lot or around the neighborhood roads at 30 miles an hour while your parent is, sitting there in the passenger seat, having a renewed interest in religion, kind of covering their eyes while their child was driving. And that's all well and good, but it doesn't teach you how to control a vehicle. Don't get me started on the state of driver's education in the United States. It just, for the most part, completely sucks. And, driver's ed, whether you're taking it through school or through, a private driving school, unless it's a really, really good driving school, they're teaching the kids how to pass the test. They are not teaching them car control and driving judgment skills, not on the level that they really need to be good drivers and be safe. And so, 99% of the population out there does not have advanced driving skills. Everybody likes to think that they're a really great driver, guys more than other people. But the reality is you do not learn the advanced driving skills that we learn as race car drivers that actually make us safer drivers on the road. Now, there's no reason that you can't, take your car, unless you drive an SUV or possibly a minivan, to your local racetrack or to an autocross course and learn those skills yourself. It just happens to be a little expensive. So I thought I would break it down for you, because there are skills that I know as a race car driver that I use on the racetrack that you can actually use on the regular streets and practice every day that you're behind the wheel. And these will make you a better driver. And if nothing else, they'll make your soul-sucking commute a little more fun and entertaining. So here's some examples. One of the biggest problems that most drivers have is when they're driving along, especially when you're in commuter stop and go traffic and your brain's kind of going numb anyway. People tend to just watch the car in front of them. They kind of get in this hypnotic state of watching, the bumper of the car in front of them, and then they just react to whatever that car does. Well, first of all, that car may not be doing the right thing, and you could be following them off a cliff. And you don't have a lot of time to react. If something happens, 5 or 6 cars ahead of them, there's a time delay between when, that kind of comes back through all the cars and the car in front of you reacts, and then crap, you only have, a second to react. So one of the things that we learn on the racetrack, and I'm an instructor at Carolina Motorsports Park, so I teach this to my students. The biggest thing we have to teach is look ahead. You need to be looking as far down the road as you can possibly see. That may mean looking through the back window of the vehicle in front of you. And I know that can be challenging. I drive a Mini Cooper, so I'm in this tiny car every day, and you get behind all these big SUVs and trucks on the freeway that have tinted windows, and that's very difficult to see through them. So I'll move my car to one side of my lane or the other so that I can see around the bigger car in front of me, because I want to be able to see as far ahead as possible. That way, if all hell breaks loose further down the road, I can see it when it happens, or at least a lot sooner, instead of waiting for the car in front of me to react. I can see that cars are starting to hit their brakes, so I can anticipate that I need to slow down instead of waiting until I see the brake lights of the guy in front of me and they're going, oh crap, I got a brake. That's why people get rear-ended on the freeway and on regular roads, because people are not looking far enough ahead. It takes time for your eyes to see something and then your brain to react and decide what the right thing to do is, and then send those signals to your feet and your hands so that you can then control the car. The more time you have to not just react, but to make a conscious decision as to what is the right thing for me to do in this situation in order to be safe, the more time you have to do that, the better off you're going to be. Now, related to that is focusing on where you want your car to end up. Now, that's kind of a weird concept on the road, but we tend to just look out our front windshield. When we're on the racetrack and we are turning, we are actually looking through the turn, and that may mean turning our head so that we're looking out the driver's side window or out the passenger side window, because we're looking where we want the car to go. If you've ever just been driving down the street and you're kind of sightseeing, this happens a lot during the holidays where we're looking, oh, look at the pretty Christmas lights, or the rubberneckers when there's an accident. Oh, look what's over there. When you turn your head or turn your eyes and you look in a direction, your hands follow your eyes, which means your car goes in that direction. So the car is going to go where you are looking. This happens when you're walking too. Always look where you want to go instead of, kind of looking around you or keeping your eyes straight forward. So on the track, we look through the turns, and you can apply that to driving on the street to make sure that your eyes are looking where you want the car to go when you want it to go there, because your hands and therefore the steering wheel will follow your eyes. And that is where the car is going to go. That is the hardest thing to teach my students on the racetrack, is look out this window, look out that window. It's a very alien concept to them, but it makes you a much better driver, and you end up following a much better line on the racetrack or on the street. Now, here's a weird one. Push your tongue to the roof of your mouth. I know that sounds completely crazy, but here's why we do that. The tip of your tongue is basically one big field of densely packed nerve endings. And by pushing your tongue to the roof of your mouth, you're sending electrical signals to your brain that is responsible for your balance, which is key to understanding what your car is doing at any moment and how you can kind of feel what's going on around you. That moment of hypersensitivity when you push your tongue to the roof of your mouth, it also wakes you up. It kind of keeps your brain firing. If you're on a long commute, or you kind of feel your attention wandering, or I'm going to be driving down I-85 through Atlanta tomorrow, and there are some stretches through South Carolina and Georgia that are just ungodly boring. So if my attention starts to wander, I'm going to start pushing my tongue to the roof of my mouth to fire off all those electrical impulses and get my brain re-engaged. We do that on the racetrack to keep ourselves kind of hyper aware of everything that's going on in the car and everything going on around us. But that's an important thing to do when you're driving in stop and go crazy traffic as well, or if you just need to make sure you're paying more attention. This is a technique that's actually used to help treat people that have traumatic brain injury or Parkinson's disease or MS. There is actual medical science behind that. So it's not just one of those crazy race car driver, things that we do. It's a real thing. So the next time you're in traffic, give that a try. Push your tongue to the roof of your mouth and see how much more aware of your surroundings and of the car and how it's moving you become. We're going to take a super quick break, and I'll be back in about 60 seconds with where you should put your hands and why you should brake with your left foot. I'll be right back. Do you hate car shopping? Do you worry about being taken advantage of, or about finding the right car at a fair price? Buying a car can be a frustrating and time-consuming experience. But what if you could get a great deal without having to do a ton of research, without having to haggle, and without the fear of buying a lemon? You can. As your personal car shopper, the Car Chick will help you pick the perfect car based on your unique lifestyle, budget, and personality. She'll handle all of the legwork and negotiating for you. All you have to do is sign the papers and take the keys. It's that easy. To learn how the Car Chick can save you time, money, and hassle on your next car purchase, give us a call at 888-575-2138. That's 888-575-2138. Or visit us on the web at thecarchick.com.
Where the rubber meets the road.
Nice to meet you. Love your asphalt.
Hey, nice treads.
It's Straight Shift with the Car Chick.
And we're back talking about advanced driving techniques that race car drivers like myself learn by training and practicing out on the racetrack that you as an average just daily commuter can employ on the streets to make you a better and safer driver. We've talked about where your focus should be, not just watching the car in front of you, but looking really far ahead and looking in the direction that you want the car to go, as well as pushing your tongue to the roof of your mouth if you need to kind of reawaken your awareness of what's going on around you. Another technique that we teach, and I teach this to students on the street as well. This should be used on the racetrack and on the street. It's where you put your hands on your steering wheel. Unfortunately, the traditional driver's ed has always taught put your hands in the 10 and 2 position. Don't do it. There's a couple of reasons why that is a bad idea. It's always been a bad idea from a car control standpoint, but in today's day and age, with most cars having airbags, pretty much every car has an airbag unless you have a really old car. So it is safer. If your hands are in 10 and 2 and that airbag deploys, you are more likely to get hit by that airbag and have damage to your arms. We teach driving in the 9 and 3 position. This gives you several advantages. Number one, it keeps your arms a little more out of the way of a deploying airbag should you find yourself in that situation. On cars that have steering wheel audio controls, your hands should be at 9 and 3 anyway, because then you can hit those little buttons to change your radio stations. But the biggest reason you want to keep your hands in that 9 and 3 position is all about car control. So when you're setting your seating position, get in the car, get in the seat. The seat should be pushed as far forward as you need to so that your leg, if your leg is extended, not completely locked out, but with kind of just a softly bent knee, your foot can touch the firewall that's behind your brake pedal. The reason we do that is so if you have to slam on your brakes and your foot, really pushes that brake pedal all the way in, that you have the extension and the strength in your leg to do so. It can be a bit of a balancing act for those of us short people, because for me to be able to push my pedals all the way to the floor, and I've got 3 pedals, so my left foot has to be able to push that clutch all the way to the floor. I have to sit pretty close to the steering wheel, and that can be a little increased risk for airbag deployment, but I will take car control instead any day, because if I have maximum control over my car, both from a pedal standpoint and from having my arms, when my arms are in that 9 and 3 position, I want to be able to have kind of a 90 to 120 degree angle between my upper arm and my forearm, so that the angle of your elbow being bent should be between 90 degrees and 120 degrees. And when you're in the 9 and 3 position and you're turning, you should keep your hands in that 9 and 3 position and turn the wheel until you can't turn, you can't reach it anymore. You don't want to try and get your hands all crossed over. But a lot of your turns can be made without having to do that, hand over hand wheel thing. Depending on how sharp the curve is, you may need to do that. In racing, we do something called shuffle steering, which I'm not going to try to explain over a podcast. I'll do a video on that sometime. But in the 9 and 3 position, you can turn that car quite a bit without having to move your hands. And that gives you maximum control over that steering wheel and over your car if you have to take evasive action. It allows you to use not just your arms to control the car, but now you're also using your core muscles, your lat muscles, your shoulders, all of your core has the strength to be able to control that wheel. Whereas in the 10 and 2 position, you're kind of sitting on top of the wheel. You don't have as much side to side movement, so you have to take your hands off the wheel sooner in order to make that hand over hand motion to turn. Whereas in 9 and 3, you might be able to make that turn without ever taking your hands off the wheel. Anytime your hands are off that steering wheel, you have less control of the car. So for me, I want to be able to sit as close as I need to be able to push those pedals to the floor and have complete control and not have my legs locked out, or I'm not trying to reach the brake pedal with my toes. And I want my arms to have the maximum control over that steering wheel using the strength of my full torso if necessary. In the race car, I need that because we have no power steering and it's really tight. And so turning that wheel is actually very, very difficult unless you are going 100 miles an hour. Backing the car out of the parking space in the paddock is a nightmare. You don't really realize how amazing power steering is until you don't have it. But that gives you the most control over the car. So that leads to the next technique, and that's when you're turning that steering wheel, you use a pull down, push up method. Most people, if you're in the 10 and 2 position, you really kind of have no choice but to kind of push the steering wheel left or right, depending on which direction you want to go. And that uses just kind of your shoulder muscles. And you can't move the wheel as quickly or as strongly. If you're in 9 and 3, if you need to turn, let's, for example, we're making a left-hand turn. Instead of just pushing the steering wheel to the left with your right arm and your right shoulder, pull down on the steering wheel with your left arm and let the right one just kind of go along for the ride on top of the wheel. The reason we do that, and without delving too deep into all the physiology, you've got two different types of basic muscle fibers. You have slow twitch muscle fibers and you have fast twitch muscle fibers. The slow twitch fibers are what you use for endurance, like if you're running a marathon. Fast is when you need kind of quick sprinter style bursts. And you actually use those muscles when you're driving the car. You tend to have more fast twitch muscles, and you use those to pull down the steering wheel versus what you're using to push up on the steering wheel. So what this boils down to, I got too into the physiology, but what it boils down to is you have more dexterity if you pull down with your left hand for a left hand turn than you would if you're pushing up with your right. More dexterity, more strength means that your body has more control over the car. And you don't get tired out as quickly. Now, on your average commute around town, you're probably not going to get tired out, steering your car. On the racetrack, we definitely do, because in the endurance races, we're in the car 2 to 3 hours at a time, driving 100 miles an hour and doing all these crazy turns. We get exhausted. So it's really important on the track, but it's just better control technique to use on the road. Another technique that we sometimes use, and there's some debate about this, so I'm not going to say absolutely do this, but something to think about is we've learned to brake sometimes with our left foot. Now, if you drive a car with an automatic transmission, your left foot is never really doing anything. It's just kind of hanging out over there out of the way. So learning to brake with your left foot if you drive an automatic can be a good thing because you can keep that foot kind of hovered over the brake pedal when you're in traffic. And therefore, if you have to hit the brakes really quickly and suddenly, you can do it a lot faster with that left foot versus moving your right foot over from the gas pedal. Sometimes, at highway speeds, that can mean stopping as much as 50 feet sooner. This is a technique that you really have to train, though, and I do not recommend doing it until you have gotten very, very good at it, and it is second nature. So practicing it a lot in parking lots, on back roads, until that is second nature for you, it can be dangerous. Don't just switch over to it in the middle of commuting on I-77 to work. But the other option is to hover that right foot over the brake pedal. When you're in stop and go traffic, you don't necessarily have to be on the gas pedal all the time because you're doing stop and go. So if you're off the brake and you have an automatic transmission car, your car is most likely going to roll forward when you take your foot off the brake. You don't always have to put your foot back on the gas. So keep that right foot hovered over the brake pedal, not touching it, not resting on it, because then you're riding the brake and it ruins your brakes and it confuses the guy behind you. But if you're just keeping it hovered there, you can react much faster if you do need to slam on your brakes. If you drive a manual transmission car, or as I say, a car with the proper number of pedals and a proper transmission, then you want to stick to normal braking because that left foot is going to have to be used to push the clutch in most of the time. As a race car driver, our cars are manual transmissions, obviously. So we will still sometimes left foot brake though, because there's a lot of times when we need to just tap the brakes or, slow down the car a little bit without having to downshift. So we will do that with the left foot because it is so much faster because we got to jab the brake and get right back on the gas. Those are racing techniques that you're not going to need to use on the street. When I learned to drive on a manual transmission, and my father taught me to left foot brake in the automatic transmission car in Mom's station wagon, which, I would rather have, been tarred and feathered than have to drive that thing. But in the manual transmission car, he says, never left foot brake because I don't want you to, go to slam on your brakes and end up only hitting the clutch. So what we get out of that is hovering a foot over the brake pedal when you're in stop and go traffic can reduce your reaction time if you need to slam on the brakes. So get in the habit of doing that. And finally, There's three different things that you can do with a car. You can accelerate, you can brake, and you can steer. But you don't want to do all those things at the same time. In fact, you often don't want to do more than one of those things at the same time. Think of your car as kind of a dance partner that you really want to impress. And, you want to be gentle and you want to be smooth. And so you can steer, or you can brake, or you can accelerate. You can accelerate and steer at the same time, but you don't want to steer and brake at the same time. And here's why. When you hit the brakes, or even if you just let your foot off the gas, that is effectively braking the car. It's engine braking. Your car is slowing down. Anytime you do that, the weight of the car goes forward. It all gets kind of thrown onto the front wheels. And so that means your rear tires are lightened up. All the weight is taken off those rear tires, which means they have less traction back there. All the weight gets thrown to the front of the car. Now, if you're driving in a straight line, that's perfectly fine. The car's going nice and straight. Both of those front tires can handle the traction of slowing down or coming to a stop. If you hit the brakes, the weight of the car is thrown forward onto your two front tires. Now imagine turning the wheel to the left. When you turn the wheel to the left, all of the weight of the car goes to the right. That's that kind of body roll that you feel when you're cornering in the car. If you hit the brakes and the weight goes forward and you turn and the weight goes to one side, guess what? All the weight of the car is on one tire. So that one tire is responsible for holding the entire car to the road. There will come a point, and it will not take very long to get there, where that tire goes, "Wah! I can't do it anymore." And it gives up, and that's when you spin out. That is when you lose traction and bad things happen. So there are times on the racetrack where we will do that on purpose. That's an advanced technique, not even going to get into it. I don't even teach my students on the track to do that. It's called trail braking. Just don't do it. On the road, there is never any reason to do it. So get all of your braking done in a straight line. That means hopefully you're looking ahead, and if you see a curve coming up that you think, ooh, I might be going a little too fast for that curve, slow down before you get to that turn so that your foot is off the brake pedal and back on the gas. Even if it's just a steady hold on that gas pedal, you don't have to be accelerating, just hold steady before you turn the wheel to go into that turn. I have seen more idiots spin out in the middle of a curb on a road simply because they waited until they were already in the middle of the turn to think, oh crap, I'm going too fast. And they slammed on the brakes. So what happened? They spun out. So always do your braking in a straight line. And then once you get through the turn and you start to straighten your wheel out, then you can start squeezing back on the gas. If you accelerate while your steering wheel is still turned, you're not going anywhere. The car cannot accelerate very much when the steering wheel is turned. So when we're on the racetrack, we teach our students, get your braking done in a straight line. Look through the turn. Right foot back, hovering over the gas. Turn the wheel, go through the turn. As you exit the turn, you open the wheel back up to where it's straight, and then you start squeezing back on the gas. That is the best way to get through the turn, whether you're on the racetrack or you're on the street. So steer or brake or accelerate, but not all at the same time. I know I've thrown a lot of advanced techniques at you guys, but these are things that, I've been racing for 25 plus years and have trained with some of the greatest racing coaches out there. I have a lot of seat time on the track and a lot of seat time on the road. And the techniques that I have learned on the racetrack make me a more skilled and therefore safer driver on the road. I just have to remember to slow down. So I have a few speeding tickets, but that's a totally separate issue. I do have the car control. And these are techniques that you can practice on the road to make yourself a safer driver. Hope this helps, guys. I'm going to go get my car packed up and head to the racetrack, and hopefully we'll have a good, safe race weekend and the car won't blow up and we'll end up on the podium. If you want to keep up with the racing antics this weekend, I will be posting stuff to my Car Chick Facebook page, which you can get to through the little Facebook social media link on my website, thecarchick.com. Thanks so much, guys, and drive safely.
The Straight Shift Podcast is copyright LeeAnn Shattuck, The Car Chick, 2017. All views expressed by guest and or co-hosts are those of the guest and or co-hosts, and not necessarily those of LeeAnn Shattuck or The Car Chick.